A warm welcome to you, Daniel and Patrick. Thank you so much for joining us on this platform on the Digital Transformation Summit Africa 2021. We're very excited to have both of you here, and we really want to understand. Let me start with you first, Patrick. That the COVID pandemic has hit Africa hard. It also has fueled the ongoing digital transformation of businesses, whether you like it or not. And because of the pandemic, because of lockdown, because of the reduction in contact, digitization was the way to go to for many businesses, including banking. So, how has this played out over the last 1 year?
Anisha, thank you very much, and very happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. Indeed, COVID has really accelerated digital transformation, not just in the banking sector, but across all sectors across the world. Because what COVID has done is COVID has really shown all of us the fragility of globalization and the dependency on skills that are oftentimes not within the control of organizations when it comes to transforming at speed. So COVID has really forced all organizations to rethink their customer journeys end to end digitally, because that's the only choice that most organizations or most economies in shutdown have had, which is really taking the way your customers relate to you today and really taking the end-to-end in mind and completely changing from very analog, say, branches in the case of banks to pure online, mobile-first type solutions. So COVID has really accelerated not just the development, but it's also accelerated the take-on, which is really consumers now getting new skills, getting new ways of still meeting their critical everyday lifestyle needs.
Right. Daniel would like to bring you in, like Patrick has said, that the way to go digital has been hastened because of the COVID pandemic. But, it is believed that a number of African financial service providers are still, working around the edges of tradition, relying a lot on legacy IT systems, which require a lot of computing resources and even time consuming maintenance work. So do you think that this assessment is fair, and have you seen some organizations moving to a more flexible cloud structure, or are they preferring to be on premise, and because of security concerns or otherwise?
Thank you, Anisha, and thank you to the organizers of this platform. I think it's a very intuitive platform, for knowledge sharing and also for collaboration. And also to my esteemed, colleague on the chat, Patrick. Thank you for making out the time. All right, I think to your question, within what the ambit of what regulation has allowed, I think to a large extent there's been some transformation. Locally here in Nigeria, I remember in some time past, there's been some regulation around, cloud or moving financial service data to the cloud. But to a large extent now, that regulation has been, has been reviewed. So there's been some very good adoption in that regard. So like I mentioned, to a large extent, regulation is allowing that transformation. That as a first level. Now, moving it down to the organization, there's been some legacy system which, to some extent, could hinder integration with some of the new technologies. I think to a large extent, most organizations are getting around that. Given the returns on investment, most of the board of most banks and also big time organizations locally in Nigeria, they are looking beyond that, they're investing and the infrastructure, in new infrastructure to, provide that connectivity. But for me, the challenge has been more capacity. You look at the ambit of process, people and infrastructure, even though you can invest fund in expanding your infrastructure, you can re-engineer your process. The challenge has been more on the capacity side. And that's where a platform like this, where knowledge is being shared, is actually very important. If you have those three areas addressed, capacity, process, and more investment in infrastructure, I think it will be seamless and there will be more adoption in that regard.
Right. Patrick, would you like to come in at your bank? Are there any constraints on the capacity? Are processes in place, and are you looking at making further investments to, take your digital journey a step ahead?
Thank you, Anisha, and I thank you, Daniel, again for that wonderful submission. Look, I think the problems that Daniel puts out that organizations face, especially organizations like mine, which is 150 years old, which is really old, has been around the longest time, is that our legacy systems today are the receptors of our customer experiences. So you can imagine all the data that sits within our legacy systems. You can imagine all the interrelations that sit there. And I think a lot of banks then struggle to abstract innovation away from their core legacy systems because the data is there, the interactions are there. So I think we as a bank are not unique in those problems, but what has really made us unique as a bank is how fast and how quickly we are abstracting innovation away from our core. Because as a bank driven by a people promise of Ghana is our home, we drive a growth, Africa is our home, we drive a growth, we are becoming a platform entity that really at the core of it enables producers, consumers, buyers, sellers engage and interact on a daily basis. And that really demands that in terms of technology, we play at the forefront of cutting edge fourth industrial revolution technology like cloud, like artificial intelligence, robotics, as the other speakers have said. And I think the beauty of the digital economy today is that the skills and to a large extent the tools are there and are quite common. Is the application and the execution backed by the strategy that differentiates the players trying to use them. But we've been presented today with tools that enable us really bring considerable efficiencies to organizations through the likes of artificial intelligence, intelligence automation. We are witnessing unprecedented computing power by leveraging of the cloud and beginning to do really interesting computation with customer data and translating secondary needs out of the primary interactions we're having with our customers. We are witnessing also very early the adoption of blockchain, really around how data becomes immutable to solve for pressing risk in financial delivery services like identity, KYC, etc. So I think all the tools are there. And because we are quite clear that our people promise really allows us or really calls on us to empower African dreams, we are taking really important advantage of all these range of tools that are available. In terms of capacity, I think oftentimes when people talk about digital transformation, people talk about just technology. But to Daniel's earlier submission, the capacity and the people component really, for me, is the secret sauce. It's really building an intellectual, curious staff that begins to learn and continue learning around the digital economy, because the digital economy, to your presentations earlier, is ever so evolving that for me is a critical component. So it's not just technology, but it's really bringing your people next generational skills that allows your organization to be future ready.
Yes, but then Patrick, the millennials are already, on digital platforms, and they're going to be the next customers. So, at least, they're really amenable to do this. You have technology, but you need a digital economy. I'm sure they'll be, open to adopt it as well. Now, Daniel, Patrick has spoken about, the way it works in his bank. Now, how do you efficiently develop a client-first digital transformation strategy, focusing especially on cybersecurity? Because you mentioned the regulatory issues that were there earlier. So I want to understand is when companies move to come up with a client-first digital transformation strategy, what should they be worried about when it comes to cybersecurity? And the regulators, are they proactive in their policy making, or are they reactive to what is happening around? Uh, how does it work there?
Thank you for that question. From the regulatory side, I think we have so many regulations outside, so many framework. The issue, it's not for me, based on my over 15 years experience in the industry. The issue for me is not about regulation, because there are so many content of regulation that are yet to be implemented. The issue is catching up with the pace of what the regulators are enabling. So to your question, how do we build, solutions that are, in tune with the market, that allow for customer acceptance and all of that. I think some of the things that locally in Nigeria and some pocket of countries in Africa are doing is to form customer advocacy groups, such that you have feedback from the market in terms of integrating the customer with the design. To a large extent, the model that technology has adopted before now is to roll out products and exclude customer from the design. So when you have such structure in which customers are actually part of the design, both the security infrastructure and also the product piece, it's actually easier for you to get very good milestones in terms of customer acceptance. And also, I think the trends and we're getting from cybersecurity industry in terms of threats relating to the market, it allows for so many inputs for us to in designing, a much more secure platform. I mean, today we have feeds from platforms. I don't want to mention their name for branding purpose. Those content are actually very useful in preempting what we should expect in a year from now, in 2 years from now, and those serve as very good viable content into building much more secure platform. But like I re-emphasize again, the issue is not around technology. The issue is not around re-engineering the process. The issue is more of catching up with the pace in terms of capacity of what the technology will offer. That's where we are, and I believe that we definitely will do better with platforms like this. Thank you.
Right, Patrick. Digital transformation is something that is happening, and it has a huge opportunity in Africa. What are you doing to, increase the transformation in your bank? Like Daniel is talking, do you involve customers in the kind of products or the cybersecurity firewalls that you build in? How are you seeing digital transformation, and what is the potential in the financial services industry in Africa?
Okay, Anisha, that's a very heavily loaded question. And maybe I take the customer aspect first. I think that's really, really important. When we set out for our transformation program 3 years ago, our vision was really clear. Our vision was co-creating seamless experiences with our customers. So the customer is really key. Indeed, the reason why you transform your business digitally is so that you serve your customer properly. And I think what we are seeing now is that today, for most organizations, the customer represents the weakest point in the chain when it comes to cybersecurity. So you find, even though banks generally are investing heavily and are trying to catch up if we ever can with cybersecurity trends, etc., because the customer is the ultimate beneficiary of the service we are rendering, the customer, if not properly educated, the customer, if not properly secured, now represents the most vulnerable point of how your systems are compromised, etc. And over the years, the lessons we've had is really one strongly based in educating the customer and ensuring that the customer understands the multitude of risks being faced in this digital economy. We've also seen very done well, if done well, successes around giving the customer free tools that enables the customer to secure their devices, etc. Because some customers simply can afford firmware and all these other fancy ways of fighting cybercrime. So I think banks and financial institutions have an obligation to ensure that in interactions, all the endpoints that represent vulnerability are secured or provided the tools to become secure. Because you can invest in everything within your own organization, but once the customer is compromised, chances are that filters through. So I think that's really, really important. We are really actively bringing in customers in the conversation, and I see generally a lot of players do that as well. In terms of the potential for digital financial services on the continent, Anisha, I think we are just really maybe in the second tranches of it. If you look at what mobile money is brought to the continent in sub-Saharan Africa, it tells you of the immense potential to really bring millions and millions of Africans all over the continent into the digital financial ecosystem. An example here in Ghana is that over the past 10, 15 years, the telco sector has really bridged the gap in financial inclusion in partnership with the regulator and banks. Over 15 million people compared to 5 million customers in banks over the past 50 years. Over 50 million new people have been added to the financial ecosystem because of the ease and the simplicity telco wallets are bringing to store value and the exchange of value between person to person. So if you look at Africa's teeming youth, which is the biggest part of our population, if you look at factors like mobile telephony and data penetration skyrocketing, hitting saturation on the continent, it provides the perfect recipe to address a lot of the unmet need for the largely informal or for the significant unbanked that still need to be banked on the continent and in the country. So I think in terms of opportunities, we are only first phase. Even though we talk about mobile money with such reverence, mobile money is really in its first life because a lot of it today is really just person-to-person transfers. And if we then examine the range of value-added services that will be stacked on that financial included component now, it presents limitless opportunity really around improving livelihoods with banks and indeed the entire digital ecosystem innovating on the back of the data and the millions of data that is being generated at the back of this. So I think we're really early days yet. If you look at the evolution of e-commerce and the rise of e-commerce, if you look at merchant payment and the opportunity it presents on the continent, I think the next few years is really going to be exciting for the digital ecosystem, fintechs, banks, etc. on the continent, who really seek to understand customer needs and really take advantage of the maturities in technology, etc., to solve for those customer needs at large, Anisha.
Right. Daniel, Patrick has spoken about mobile money. Now, it's the documented success in Africa, and it's been around for many years now. You have to give it for convenience. Digital payments are a convenient mode of doing many things. It's also an enabler for economic inroads, and like Patrick mentions, for those in the unorganized sector. So, what in your mind is like Patrick also mentioned, can be added on? What are the other value-added services that can be, piggybacking digital money? And where do you see that going in the future?
Okay, thank you for that question. Product that actually aligns with the lifestyle of the customer gets more acceptance. I remember then somewhere around 2010, I was in my master's in United Kingdom, and there's a discussion around user experience. You can have so many functions, but if the user experience doesn't align with my lifestyle, to a large extent, the customer could jettison the product. And I believe these days, there's been so much adoption, given the metrics that actually mentioned a while ago for, some of the products in Kenya, for example. Even in Nigeria, there's been big time adoption of mobile money, mobile wallet transaction for the last mile users. We're talking about the traders on the streets. Why? Because this product aligns with their lifestyle. For example, if you compare a last mile user that doesn't have the kind of mobile phone that me and you will have, they depend more on the USSD transaction, and we've had so much platform that actually could do USSD, so that's to speak to the advancement and the development some of our developers are, are considering. So for me, to a large extent, there's been adoption, there's been progress, and there's been acceptance. But the summary is product that aligns with the lifestyle of the customer actually have the largest traction in terms of acceptance.
Right. But the lifestyle of millennials is more digital, right, Daniel? They watch streaming services, they go to social media platforms, they're chatting on WhatsApp. So as a company and a brand that has to connect with customers, these are the things you're going to use, right? So I wanted to understand from you first, Daniel, what are the other services that can be padded on using digital platforms? Payments is one, and you spoke about remittances as well. What about lending? Could that also go digital completely?
Definitely. Definitely, platform like LinkedIn, also embedding payment solution on platform like LinkedIn. I mean, at one point, we're talking about integrating payments on platform like Facebook. That has been actually we see so many of that these days. We've seen collaboration on, payments on platform like, WhatsApp. On LinkedIn, definitely we should expect something like that to come up, because the APIs are being exposed to developers, so it's easier for such integration to easily, just take place. I think I align with you in that area.
All right. Patrick, how mature are the digital payment gateways in Africa? And to your mind, for your bank, what is the next line that you want to conquer, the next thing that you want to deliver to your customers when it comes to banking or other financial solutions?
Anisha, let me answer the tail part of your question first. I'm going to behave like a bad student who's prepared for exams and has been asked a question. So I'm going to answer the tail part. I think, for us as a bank, we are hugely driven by people promise, which is to empower dreams in the countries we operate in across the African continent. So we are really, really keen as an organization to bring together producers and consumers and to facilitate how they interact on a daily basis. I think that's what we are extremely keen on as a bank, because oftentimes as financial institutions or as service organizations, we spend a lot of our time solving only the primary need of the customer at the expense of understanding at depth what secondary needs then are required to fulfill this primary need. I'll give you a very basic example. If somebody comes to a bank and they say they're buying a house, all we worry about is the mortgage for the most part. But what happens when the person buys the house? What appliances or energy efficient appliances do they need to deploy in the house so that the cost of running the house is cheaper for them? How do we then empower them to meet cheaper supplies of household equipment, household appliances? That's really what we are driven by a bank now to do, because that's really how you empower lives across the continent. It's really having a deep understanding of what really matters to customers beyond the basic bank account, what really matters to the customer beyond the basic product or the basic offering, and really engaging at scale with the customer to provide them best alternatives that allows them to meet their everyday lifestyle needs. So that's our commitment to the continent as a bank. because I think over and above, that's why people want to get included. People really don't want a bank account because it's a fancy item. A bank account really is leveraged to empower dreams for most Africans, because for most Africans, is the first loan to buy the car that allows the family to do more things. Is the first loan to the mortgage that provides shelter, etc. So that's what our commitment to as a bank is, and entails really not just innovating by ourselves, but partnering the entire digital ecosystem to take advantage of all the wonderful innovations on the continent. We are so blessed on the African continent with a lot of youth power. And sitting in my role today, I'm privy to millions of intellectual property and innovations across the continent. That's really going to change the way Africans engage. It's going to change the way Africans transact. It's going to change the way Ghanaians in generally buy things, and really just live out their lifestyle. So I think that's really the commitment. And if you then track how significant financial inclusion is being to economies of Africa, then you perhaps understand our trajectory in growing to become this platform organization. So I think that's critical, because we are more than a bank, Anisha. But I think what is also good for the continent today really is that even though we have our challenges, the opportunities for me critically outweigh the challenges, and we have quite an interesting window now to perhaps for the first time leapfrog as a continent when it comes to the digital economy.
That's very heartening to hear. But Patrick is still waiting to understand how mature you think the payment gateways are, and do we need improvement there? If you had to go lend, you said that you're more than just a bank, a digital bank as a product for your customers. But if you had to give in more value-added services, are you ready now?
No, absolutely. I think, based on our expertise and our core competencies, there's quite a lot that you would see in the coming years, months, in partnership with the bigger ecosystem to get out. Because, I think people take it for granted the understanding fintechs and other innovative players have in understanding the real customer need.
Right.
But what we bring to the table is just the ability to scale, is the ability to provide access to market, access to financing, but it's also the ability to bring all our expertise to the table, one API at a time, within this larger innovative ecosystem to really drive innovation. And as a bank, we've really paid our dues in the past 3 years foundationing, because the crust of your digital transformation strategy is that you are ambidextrous around meeting customer needs today, but also being able to build a runway for future needs, right? So I think as a bank, we've done that on the quiet, we've done that engaging the larger ecosystem, and we are really ready for scale, which is why we are now embracing this big, bold, audacious dream of providing for Africa's needs on a platform basis.
Daniel, last word to you. You said that digital products work because of a lifestyle. So going ahead, do you see greater acceptance for digital financial products? What will be the one thing that everybody will welcome?
Yes, definitely. In Nigeria, I want to give an example of FINA, for example, is a research in Nigeria. I think some other part of Africa in which they're exploring payment for last mile user, digital inclusion, and those research has actually helped the market, and like I mentioned, the more we roll out products that aligns with customer experience, banks have been transformed today. Customer banks has been known for credits, but the way we administer credit right now, the process is much more simpler, much more accessible to the customer, from mobile money perspective. So with such innovation in place, I think really the market and the ecosystem definitely will enjoy some very good traction. That's we should expect, definitely.
All right, we'd like to end it there. Daniel and Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing with us your views on what's happening in Africa when it comes to financial services, the inroads that banks and financial institutions are making when it comes to digital transformation and connecting to their customers digitally and providing for their every need digitally. Thank you so much to both of you, Daniel and Patrick, for sparing the time and joining us today.